The SAT results have been released, and my younger brother, Alvin Bellamy, got a score of 1400. To celebrate his achievement, I set aside my usual frugal habits and throw him a party. Amid the lively cheer, he suddenly says, "Sandy, I'm legally an adult now. It's time for you to give me mom's life insurance payout, yeah." I shake my head in response, but just as I'm about to explain why, he flies off the handle. I've had enough of the pressure of studying in this country. I didn't even bother applying to any colleges, and the application deadlines have closed, so I'll be stuck attending a community college. If you don't want to ruin my future, you have to give me the money so I can study abroad instead. Feeling disappointed and disheartened, I transfer Alvin $5,000 on the spot. However, he assumes I'm keeping the lion's share of the money to myself. Not only does he threaten me in front of everyone, but he even teams up with our biological father, who cheated on our mother many years ago, to spread lies about me. "You've been hoarding all of our dead mom's life insurance payout, living it up this whole time while refusing to give any of the money to me, your own brother. What did I do to deserve a sister as vicious as you?" Looking right into the eyes of the nasty ingrate I've doted on for over a decade now, I scoff and throw out a pile of invoices. Where do you think the money that's been spent on you all these years came from? In fact, if we're going to settle the score properly, you owe me 580 grand. When it comes down to it, you just don't want to give me the money. How can you have the nerve to call yourself my older sister when you're trying to keep all of mom's life insurance payout to yourself? Alvin Bellamy, the younger brother whom I'd painstakingly taken care of for 10 long years, was now glaring resentfully at me. My throat tightened. I couldn't speak. Our relatives, who'd come for the party, all assumed I'd been caught in the act, so they started chiming in at once. "You're definitely in the wrong here, Sandra. Sure, you've worked hard taking care of Alvin all these years, but what kind of older sister doesn't look after her younger brother? Keeping the money for yourself is such a heartless thing to do. Alvin scored 1400 on his SAT. Just give him the money. As long as you two maintain a good relationship, he'll definitely repay you in the future." "That's right. We know you've had a hard time all these years, but that's no excuse to keep all that money to yourself." Their doubts and accusations came crashing over me, making it hard for me to breathe. I'm not trying to keep the money from him. After Mom died, I ignored my teacher's advice and gave up my education. Throughout these years, for Alvin's sake, I worked all kinds of jobs, even waiting tables and standing for hours on end-along factory assembly lines, doing whatever I could to earn money. At my most desperate, I even sold my blood. But in the end, what did I have to show for it? Alvin, my own brother, chose to put me on the spot at the celebration party I organized. Right in front of all our guests, he accused me of keeping mom's life insurance payout to myself. This is what I got in return for all my years of sacrifice. Perhaps my expression had turned stormier than Alvin anticipated, for he relaxed his stance a little. "I only want to use the money to study abroad, so just give it to me. I'm all grown up now. I can make my own decisions about how I want to spend the money. Your SAT score is good enough to get you into a decent college right here in the country. There's no reason for you to study abroad instead," I advised. Regardless of everything, he was still the brother I'd loved and protected for years now. I didn't want to see him go down the wrong path. Discounting the fact that you'd be all alone in a foreign country, your health won't allow you to. At the end of the day, you're just coming up with excuses not to give Alvin the money. Jimmy Sloan shouted even before I could finish speaking. "Half of the payout belongs to Alvin. How can you think about stealing your mom's life insurance payout from him? Do you even have a conscience? What did he do to deserve a sibling as despicable as you? This is none of your damn business." I glanced icily at Jimmy, our biological father, who'd ignored us for years. I couldn't find it in me to show him even the slightest semblance of courtesy. In fact, I wouldn't even have let him into the party if Alvin hadn't insisted on it. "You didn't show us an ounce of concern all these years, so don't try to butt in now either," I declared without holding back. "Why you?" Jimmy turned purple with rage, but he couldn't find the words to retort. "That's enough." Frowning, Alvin walked over to Jimmy. "No matter what, he's still our dad. How can you talk to him like that? How can you be this cold to your own family? All these years, you kept using my health as an excuse to control what I do. Don't tell me you've lied so much that you've even fooled yourself into thinking it's true. Why wouldn't I know how my body feels, huh? I'm going to be straight with you now. I didn't bother submitting any college applications, and the deadlines have passed. If you don't give me the money to study abroad, you'll be ruining my future." My face instantly paled as I stared at Alvin in disbelief. "Are you out of your mind? How can you joke around with your own future like that? Just tell me whether you're giving me the money or not." Impatience flashed in Alvin's eyes. "You've been controlling every aspect of my life all these years. If you really care about me, you'll send me abroad instead of expecting me to continue struggling in this country's cutthroat academic environment. I wouldn't even have been able to hang in for so long if Dad hadn't been there to give me the guidance and support I needed." I looked at Alvin, and the smug Jimmy standing beside him, and scoffed. Alvin had always been in poor health. He even had several surgeries done when he was younger. Because of that, I devoted all my time and attention to taking care of him. I couldn't even sleep soundly at night for fear that I wouldn't hear him call for me. It took years of sacrificial care and unfailing attentiveness to nurse him back to health. That was the only reason why I restricted him from doing certain things. Yet according to him, I was just being a controlling person, and somehow wasn't as good to him as Jimmy, the guy who abandoned us as children and only showed up occasionally to say a few empty words to him. Do you know that it was his extramarital affair that resulted in Mom's car accident? I snapped at Alvin, feeling a mix of exasperation and frustration. How I wish I could slap some sense into him. But now you're taking his side and pressuring me for money. How is this fair to Mom or me? In fact, I was already giving him a sugar-coated version of the truth. In reality, Jimmy's mistress had deliberately called Mom to let her hear what she and Jimmy were doing in bed. It had been such a huge shock to Mom that she lost control of the car and got into an accident. I kept the truth from Alvin all this time because I didn't want it to affect him. I never thought I'd end up spilling the truth now. So what? Alvin retorted. The anger burning inside of me seemed to solidify as I paused, struck dumb by Alvin's response. Staring at him in disbelief, I asked, "What did you just say?" "That has nothing to do with Mom's death. It was just an accident." Alvin didn't look at me, possibly because my expression was too incredulous, but that didn't stop him from talking. "All men do these things. Mom's the one who was too weak and sensitive and got into an accident because of it." "All men did these things, huh?" Stunned, I turned woodenly toward Jimmy, who was still standing beside Alvin with a gloating expression on his face. He rubbed his protruding belly and eyed me mockingly. I turned my gaze back to Alvin, who was starting to resemble Jimmy more and more. "Is that how you've thought about this all along?" I asked. This whole time, I'd assumed that Alvin was unaware of the past and still harbored a childlike desire for fatherly love. Never did it occur to me that he was indeed his father's son. The apple didn't fall far from the tree after all. Either way, half the payout belongs to me. I have every right to get it back from you. Alvin didn't respond to my question outright. Instead, he brought up the money again. Nevertheless, his attitude alone was all the answer I needed, and my heart turned cold with disappointment. "Why are you wasting your breath on her? It seems to me she just doesn't want to give you the money." Jimmy started shouting again. With him leading the charge, the rest of our relatives started voicing their agreement as well. "Sandra, regardless of the situation, that money belongs to Alvin. It's not right for you to keep hiding it from him and refusing to hand it over. Alvin's future is in your hands now. You're his sister. You can't ruin his life. If your mother knew things had come to this between you two, she'd be heartbroken." The invisible pressure surrounded me once more. It suddenly hit me that Alvin must have planned this from the start. He'd already decided to force me to hand over the money during the party. When did he stop trusting me? When did he start plotting against me? "Fine. You want the money, right?" I snorted as I pulled out my phone. "I'll give it to you. You'd better not regret it." Since I'd given in and got my phone out, Alvin finally broke into a smile. "Why would I regret it?" But just moments later he cried out, $5,000? Why is it only $5,000? How's that possible?" Jimmy snatched the phone from Alvin's hand. After seeing the transferred amount on the screen, he frowned grimly before suddenly pointing at me as if he'd realized something. "Sandra Bellamy, how can you steal your own brother's money? Have you no shame? The money comes from your mom's life insurance payout." "Oh, so you do know it's the life insurance payout for my mom's death, huh?" Clutching my phone tightly, I scoffed at Jimmy. "Sure, it seems like you're speaking up for Alvin, but anyone who isn't aware of the situation might think you're trying to take the money for yourself instead. After all, if I hadn't held a knife to my throat back then, this money would have already ended up in his hands. Now that he and his mistress had another son, it was hard not to suspect it was his own pockets he wanted to line with that money." Jimmy's gaze flickered, but I didn't bother with him anymore. I simply looked at Alvin, still hoping to see even a trace of realization on his face. "What the hell are you playing at?" Unexpectedly, he avoided my gaze and snapped irritably at me instead. "I've already told you I want to use this money to study abroad. Do you really want to ruin my future? Just what will it take for you to give me the money? Do you think Mom would want to see you being this heartless toward your own family like this for the sake of money? You're calling me heartless?" Fuming, I jabbed a finger at Jimmy. I had to hiss out the words to avoid shouting them instead. "If you cared about this family at all, you wouldn't have invited him over, and you wouldn't be taking his side to demand money from me in front of everyone. I'm guessing this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment thing, huh? You planned this from the beginning, didn't you?" Alvin said nothing, but the evasive look in his eyes gave him away. Even though I'd already suspected it, seeing his reaction still made my heart sink. The brother I'd devoted a decade to caring for didn't trust me at all. He even teamed up with the father who cheated on our mother to publicly pressure me into giving him money. What a mockery it made of everything I'd done for him. "There's only $5,000. I didn't take a single cent. I've already given everything to you." Suppressing my anger, I picked up my bag and turned to leave. "Since you're an adult now, we'll go our separate ways from here on out." All I got to show for 10 years of undivided care and attention was a nasty ingrate. Well, I wasn't going to foolishly carry on making the same mistake. "Hold it right there." Jimmy shouted behind me. "How dare you say you didn't take any money when you only gave Alvin $5,000? Who do you think you're fooling, Sandra? You even bought a house recently. How can you say there's only this little sum of money?" I stopped in my tracks. My blood seemed to freeze over as I whipped around and stared at Alvin. He was the only one I told about the house. "You just bought a house this year, Sandy. How can you say that's all the money you got?" Alvin met my gaze without a hint of guilt, his tone accusatory. "If you're going to lie, at least come up with a better one. I know you've sacrificed a lot all these years, but half of Mom's life insurance payout was always mine. No matter what, you should give it to me. Don't you think you're crossing the line by using that money to buy yourself a house instead? I used my own money to buy the house. As for your share of the payout, $5,000 is truly all that's left of it. If you don't believe me, I can print out the account statements tomorrow, I replied coldly. Seeing the uncertain flicker in Alvin's eyes, I snorted and left. Behind me, Jimmy's furious shouts and our relatives' overlapping chatter kept going. Alvin attended a boarding school. Ever since he demanded the money at the party, he stopped coming back to the house, choosing to stay at his dorm instead. That being said, he'd called me a few times, pressuring me to give him the money each time. Of course, I didn't give him another cent. Meanwhile, I went to work as usual, but I kept getting the feeling that my co-workers were gossiping about me behind my back. A few days later, I finally understood why. Sandra, if you can't resolve this matter, you should just resign on your own. My superior threw me a resignation letter he'd prepared for me and sent me straight home. The gossiping didn't stop. After checking my phone to see the social media post a coworker had sent me, I finally found the reason for all the contempt and malice I'd been receiving from them. Alvin had posted about what happened at the celebration party, only he'd embellished it with more lies than I could count. Every word he wrote was an accusation. He claimed I was a heartless woman who cared more about money than family. He even twisted the truth around, saying that I'd taken all of Mom's life insurance payout to buy myself a house. Standing outside the office building, I trembled with anger as I stared at my phone. Just as I was about to call Alvin, a group of people suddenly rushed toward me. There she is. That's her. She looks like a decent person, but she stole her mother's life insurance payout from her own brother. She's a monster. You heartless beast. How dare you live a life of luxury with your mom's life insurance payout, and use your brother's share to buy yourself a house. You're deplorable. Look at her, making herself appear all fancy and presentable. That doesn't hide the fact that she's a shameless and ungrateful bitch. The crowd surrounded me, and a handful of them at the front were even holding up banners, claiming that I'd kept all of Mom's life insurance payout for myself, preventing my own brother from attending college, even though he'd gotten a score of 1400 on the SAT. The bolded words printed in red drew the attention of the other passersby. I even spotted my neighbors in the crowd. Many people were taking pictures with their phones, and some had already started live streaming the scene. Goodness me, the brother did so well on the SAT, but his older sister ruined his chance to go to college. How could she take all of her mom's life insurance payout for herself? I guess you really can't judge a person by their appearance. Look at her. She's dressed like a slut. I bet she is one too. Nasty insults filled the comment sections of the live streams, and some even started spreading obscene lies about me. I hate people like you who'll do anything for money. I'm going to teach you a lesson on behalf of your dead mother. With a roar, a burly man charged at me, his fist raised. Whoa, what a righteous man. The crowd was fired up, not to help me, but to praise the man's so-called righteousness. A punch landed, alright, but it wasn't the one everyone expected. As the dust settled, Alvin suddenly pushed through the crowd, seemingly coming out of nowhere, his face full of worry. Sandy, are you okay? His voice faltered, along with the feigned concern on his face. The burly man was lying flat on the ground, groaning in pain. Everyone thought I'd be the one who got a beating, but I remained standing with an expressionless face. I'm fine. Thanks for your concern. You definitely showed up at just the right moment. I rolled my wrist, deliberately emphasizing the last few words. Of all the times he could have shown up, he did at the most pivotal moment, right when I was about to get punched. What a timely arrival it was, indeed. You will really stoop to anything just for money, I added darkly. If I didn't happen to know a bit of self-defense, I couldn't even imagine what I would have gone through today. I would have been besieged by the scandal and the humiliation. Thanks to his schemes, I might have even lost my job. This was what I got in return for everything I'd done for him the last decade. Stop acting like you're morally superior. If you cared about family at all, you'd give Alvin his share of the life insurance payout instead of using the money to buy yourself a house. Jimmy pushed his way through the crowd and put his arm around Alvin before putting on a tearful performance as he listed out my awful deeds. Just look at yourself. You've been living such a comfortable life that your skin is practically glowing. Meanwhile, Alvin looks so frail. Why do I get the feeling you've been abusing him all along, huh? And now you're hoarding the life insurance payout and trying to use emotional blackmail on him. How dare you talk about family, huh? I scoffed in anger. At home, I had always given Alvin the best of everything. If he looked frail, it was because of his health condition. But that was somehow my fault? However, thanks to Jimmy's claims, the crowd that had briefly settled down after my counterattack seemed to snap back to life. Holding their banners, they began to condemn my heartless behavior. I have to admit she's pretty tough. Look at how she took down that burly guy with one move. Yeah, she looked pretty cool just now, but that doesn't change the fact that she's a heartless monster. Using her mom's life insurance payout to buy herself a house. She's not even fit to be called a human. As they spoke, they edged closer, slowly surrounding me. The suffocating pressure closed in from all sides. Sandy, I know you've had it hard all these years. Money is important. I get that. But it shouldn't come between us like this. Alvin said in a choked voice, his eyes misty. I didn't want things to turn out like this. I would never have asked you for the money if I didn't need it to study abroad. I wouldn't even mind giving it all to you. But right now, I have no other choice. Just give me the money, Sandy. When I come back after studying abroad, I'll give you all my salary. Please, Sandy? Sandy. He called out to me again and again. sounding sincere enough to move the surrounding crowd to sigh in sympathy. But I could see right through him. I caught the scheming look in his eyes, and the smug satisfaction in Jimmy's. At last, I was completely disillusioned. My own brother, the one I had raised with my own hands, had turned into a monstrous leech. He'd spent a decade draining me dry, and now he wanted to make my life a living hell too. You came here just for money, didn't you? Looking at the crowd that was scowling angrily at me, I smirked. You even resorted to a trick like this just to force me into giving you money. I'm not trying to force you, Alvin declared, his gaze scheming. It's just that your attitude worries me. Once you give me the money, nothing else will happen. I'm not trying to harm you. Cut the bullshit. If you still think of Alvin as your brother, you'd hand over the money now, Jimmy demanded before pretending to wipe his tears again. Alvin is such a kind young man. Despite everything you've done to him, he's still worried about you. What's wrong with him wanting to get back the money that's rightfully his? Voices of agreement rose through the crowd again, while I stayed silent. Kind, huh? Was that the word used to describe a brother who used lies to manipulate the public, relying on public opinion to back his sister into a corner? Sandy, even though we're siblings, when it comes to money, we should keep the accounts clear. Family is one thing, but this money really matters a lot to me. My lack of response made Alvin impatient, and his tone started taking on a resentful tinge. Haven't I endured enough all these years, with the way you kept forcing me to focus on my studies? I'd been on the verge of breaking down countless times now. What's wrong with me wanting to study abroad? Do you even know what it's like to stay up past midnight just to study? Have you ever had to get up at 6:30 a.m. just to review your lessons? Do you have any idea how it feels to be so caught up in trying to solve a math problem that you're too stressed to even eat dinner? Alvin's voice kept getting louder. You know nothing. You dropped out of high school, yet you kept forcing me to study. Now that I can finally choose an easier path for myself by studying abroad, you hang on to all the money and refuse to give me my share. Once again, I could only laugh in anger. It was true that I never had to study past midnight or wake up early to review my lessons. But no one knew the hours I worked each day. Even getting to sleep at 1 a.m. was a luxury for me. I also had to wake up at 5 a.m. to prepare his breakfast. In fact, I'd been hospitalized multiple times as a result of my sleep deprivation and overexhaustion. How was any of that less tiring than studying? To make matters worse, he was the reason I had to drop out of school. Rage bubbled up in my chest, but I forced myself to stay calm. I'll say this one more time. I did not take your money. $5,000 truly is the entirety of your share of the life insurance payout. How could it be that little? Dad told me Mom's life insurance payout was $2 million. Alvin blurted out. All at once, he thought of something and immediately forced some tears out. He launched into another bitter tirade about my domineering ways until the crowd couldn't stop empathizing with him. I pity him so much. His mom is gone, and his sister ignored his feelings, forcing him to study just to bring honor to the family. I can't even imagine the pressure he's under. This sister of his is absolute trash. She doesn't like studying either, yet she can't empathize with how difficult it is for her brother. And now she's even withholding the money meant for his education abroad. As the voices of condemnation grew louder, Alvin seemed to gain confidence. Give me the money, Sandy. The crowd began waving their banners and punching their hands in the air, pressing closer as they chanted. Give him the money. Give him the money. Some even started getting physical with me, grabbing at me and shoving me. Fine. You want the money, right? Don't touch me. I'll tell you where it is. The moment I said that, I saw Alvin's eyes light up. He pushed through the crowd to stand in front of me. See, Sandy? Wouldn't it have been easier if you'd just done this from the start? You're not entirely wrong. I looked at him. At first, your share of the payout was $1 million. The figure made his eyes sparkle, but before he could celebrate, I went on. But after covering all your expenses until you became of age, only $5,000 remain. Don't be ridiculous, he shouted. I barely had any money growing up. I ate bland, simple meals and wore cheap clothing. It couldn't have cost much at all. Don't think you can fool me. It was true that we'd always lived frugally. Aside from saving money for his medical treatments, I'd also been saving money to buy back the house we had to sell off previously. The only thing I had left to remember Mom by. In order to do that, I had to cut down on everything. I didn't even allow myself to have the bland, simple meals Alvin was complaining about. You're right. Your living expenses don't add up to much, I said, my lips curling into a mocking smirk. But have you ever wondered why we had to live so frugally this whole time? It's because of your health condition, because you suffered from a serious heart defect. All the money we had was spent on your treatment. The moment I said that, I caught a flicker of evasiveness in Jimmy's eyes. But before I could think much of it, Alvin cried out. That's impossible. He immediately refuted my claims. I'm perfectly healthy. You've just been using that ridiculous excuse to control me this whole time. Go ahead and see for yourself. Sneering, I reached into my handbag, got my phone out, and pulled up the transaction records. The screen of my phone lit up, casting a cold, blue glow over the tense faces of the crowd. I bypassed the social media notifications, the venomous direct messages, and the missed calls from unknown numbers. Instead, I opened a encrypted cloud drive, a digital archive of pain, survival, and every single cent spent over the last 10 years. You said you barely had any money growing up, Alvin. I said, my voice quiet but steady, cutting through the murmurs of the crowd. You said you ate bland meals, wore cheap clothes, and that it couldn't have cost much. Let's look at the actual numbers. I tapped the first folder, labeled medical records and invoices, 2016 to 2020. Alvin was diagnosed with a severe congenital heart defect, specifically, tetralogy of Fallot with pulmonary atresia, I announced, turning the screen toward the live streaming cameras. When Mom died, her life insurance payout was, indeed, $2 million. Because we were minors, the funds were placed into a restricted trust. But because Jimmy here had already abandoned us and was trying to legally seize the estate, I had to petition the court to act as Alvin's guardian and administrator of those funds. I swiped to an official document bearing the seal of the Pediatric State Hospital 1. September 14th, 9 years ago. Alvin's first major corrective open heart surgery. Total cost after partial insurance coverage, $240,000. Paid directly from the trust. Alvin's eyes widened slightly, but he remained silent, his jaw clenched. January 22nd, 7 years ago. I continued, swiping to the next invoice. Emergency valve replacement due to severe postoperative infection. He spent 3 weeks in the pediatric intensive care unit. Cost, $185,000. Paid from the trust. I didn't stop there. I scrolled through years of specialized consultations, cardiac rehabilitation, monthly prescriptions of high-grade immunosuppressants, and heart regulators and emergency room visits. The numbers flashed on the screen in cold, indisputable black and white, accompanied by scanned copies of hospital receipts, doctor signatures, and bank clearance certificates. By the time you turned 15, Alvin, your medical bills alone had consumed over $850,000 of the trust, I said, looking him dead in the eye. And because you required a highly specialized diet to prevent sodium retention and strain on your heart, I spent every spare dollar of my own earnings to buy fresh, organic ingredients. Yes, the meals were bland, Alvin. They were bland because a single pinch of excess salt could have put you into acute congestive heart failure. I ate plain rice and expired canned beans so that you could have the specific, expensive nutrition the doctors prescribed. The crowd, which had been shouting insults just minutes ago, grew quiet. The live streamers lowered their gimbals slightly, their eyes darting between my phone screen and Alvin's increasingly pale face. That's a lie. Jimmy bellowed, his face turning an ugly shade of purple. Stepped forward, trying to grab my phone. She's fabricating these documents. You can buy fake medical records online for $100. Don't let her fool you. Fabricated. I let out a dry, humorless laugh. I tapped another folder. Then, let's call the chief of pediatric cardiology at St. Jude's Memorial, Dr. Marcus Vance. He's the one who operated on Alvin twice. His contact information is right here on the official hospital billing statements. Shall we call him on speakerphone right now and ask if he remembers the teenage boy whose older sister sold her own blood 3 times in a single month just to cover the cost of his post-op rejection medications when the trust account was temporarily frozen during a probate dispute? A collective gasp rippled through the onlookers. Alvin stepped back, his hand instinctively rising to his chest. He was wearing a slightly loose-fitting shirt, but everyone present knew what lay beneath it. Why do you think you have a 6-inch vertical scar running down the center of your chest, Alvin? I asked, my voice dropping to a whisper. Did you honestly believe you got that from falling off a bicycle in middle school? Is that what Jimmy told you? Alvin's lips trembled. He looked at Jimmy, then back at me. You told me it was a minor corrective procedure for a chest wall deformity. You said it was nothing. Because I didn't want you to grow up with the crippling anxiety of knowing your heart was fragile. I shouted, the dam of my composure finally cracking. I wanted you to feel like a normal kid. I took the burden of the debt, the fear, the sleepless nights, and the constant threat of your death, and I carried it all on my own back so you could study, play, and live without fear. And this is how you repay me. The silence that followed was suffocating. The shifting dynamics of the crowd were palpable. The people holding the red-lettered banners looked at each other uneasily, some of them quietly lowering their signs. Even if that's true, Alvin stammered, his voice losing its arrogant edge. There was still $1 million left in the trust after those bills. What happened to the rest? What about my $500,000? You only sent me $5,000. Let's look at the remainder of the trust, I said, swiping to the financial ledger from the probate court. After the medical expenses, there was roughly $900,000 left. By court order, the remaining funds were split into 2 equal shares of $450,000 each, one for you and one for me. So you did have $450,000 of my money. Jimmy pointed a shaking, accusatory finger at me. See, she admits it. She kept his share. I didn't keep a single cent of it, I replied coldly. By the terms of Mom's will, Alvin's share was legally designated to cover his basic living expenses, housing, and education until he reached the age of majority. For 10 years, every single dollar of his boarding school tuition, his private tutors, his clothing, his medical insurance premiums, and his living allowances was paid directly from his half of the trust. I tapped on a spreadsheet detailing the annual withdrawals, each one accompanied By a court-approved bank statement. Boarding school tuition. $35,000 a year for 6 years. That's $210,000. Private SAT tutoring and college prep courses. $15,000. Standard living expenses, health insurance and specialized care over 10 years. $220,000. Do the math, Alvin. What is 450,000 minus 445,000? Alvin's breath hitched. $5,000. Exactly $5,000, I said. The exact amount I transferred to your account on the night of your party. I didn't keep a single penny of your share. It was all spent on you. On your education, your health, and your comfort. While I lived in a cramped, moldy basement apartment next to a noisy railway line, working 12-hour shifts at a glass factory to save up enough money to buy back our mother's old house. And what about your share? Jimmy sneered, desperate to regain control of the narrative. You had $450,000 too. You used your share to buy a house, but you didn't spend a dime of your own money on Alvin. My share was used to pay off the massive outstanding debts Mom left behind due to her business failing right before her accident, I said, staring directly at Jimmy. Debts that you ran up in her name before you abandoned her for your mistress. I used my entire share to clear her name, so her memory wouldn't be dragged through bankruptcy court. The house I bought this year was paid for entirely with my own sweat, my own savings, and a 15-year mortgage that I will be paying off by working myself to the bone. Not a single cent of Mom's insurance money went into that house. I turned my gaze to the live streamers. And now, let's talk about why Jimmy Sloan is suddenly so interested in Alvin's inheritance. I swiped to a different folder, one containing public record search results. Jimmy, you filed for personal bankruptcy 3 years ago. Your current wife's son from her previous marriage is currently facing felony charges for property damage, and you owe over $80,000 in unpaid legal fees. Your house is in foreclosure. You didn't contact Alvin because you cared about his future. You contacted him because you knew he was turning 18, and you wanted to trick him into demanding a lump sum payout, so you could legally siphon it off to pay your own debts. That's a lie. Jimmy lunged at me, his face distorted with rage. But I was ready. The years of working manual labor and practicing self-defense for my own safety in rough neighborhoods had made me fast. As Jimmy reached for my collar, I stepped inside his reach, grabbed his thick wrist, twisted it downward, and applied sharp pressure to his elbow. With a loud groan, Jimmy's heavy frame was forced down onto the hot asphalt. I kept his arm locked behind his back, my knee firmly planted in his side. Don't touch me, I whispered in his ear, loud enough for the phone microphones to catch. I am not the helpless teenager you left behind 10 years ago. The crowd erupted into murmurs, but this time, the sentiment had completely flipped. Oh my God, she's telling the truth. A woman in the front row whispered, staring at her phone. Look at the comments on the live stream. People are looking up the court records. It's all real. The father is a deadbeat, another voice shouted, and the brother is a complete monster. I released Jimmy, stepping back as he scrambled to his feet, nursing his wrist, and glaring at me with unadulterated hatred. He looked at the crowd, realizing the tide had completely turned against him. The very weapon of public opinion he had tried to use to destroy me was now pointed directly at his chest. Let's go, Alvin, Jimmy hissed, grabbing Alvin's arm. We don't need to listen to this garbage. We'll get a lawyer. We'll sue her for every cent. But Alvin didn't move. He stood frozen, staring at me with a mixture of horror, confusion, and a sudden, terrifying realization. The smugness was entirely gone from his face, replaced by a hollow, sickening shock. Sandy, Alvin's voice cracked. Is it true? About the heart surgeries? About the money? I have no reason to lie to you anymore, Alvin, I said, my voice completely devoid of emotion. I spent 10 years protecting you from the harsh realities of this world. I let you believe we were just a normal, albeit frugal family. I wanted you to focus on your studies, to have a future, to be healthy. But you chose to believe a man who hasn't given you a single dollar, a single day of care, or a single shred of genuine love in your entire life. But Dad said you were hoarding the money. Alvin stammered, his eyes filling with tears. He said you bought the house with my share. He said you were trying to control me because you were jealous of my SAT score. Your SAT score is 1400, Alvin. It's a good score, I said, a faint bitter smile touching my lips. But do you know why you were able to get that score? Because while you were in your air-conditioned room studying with a tutor who cost $100 an hour, I was standing on an assembly line with chemical burns on my hands, earning the money to keep the electricity on. I didn't drop out of high school because I was stupid, Alvin. I dropped out because one of us had to work so the other wouldn't starve. Alvin looked down at my hands. For the first time, he actually saw the faded chemical scars on my palms, the calluses on my knuckles, and the worn cheap watch I had worn for 8 years. I didn't know, he whispered, a tear escaping his eye and rolling down his cheek. Sandy, I swear I didn't know. You didn't know because you didn't care to look, I replied. You were so eager to play the victim, so quick to believe that the sister who doted on you for a decade was your enemy, just so you could find an excuse to run away from your responsibilities. You didn't want to go to college here, because you were afraid of hard work, so you let Jimmy convince you that a magical inheritance would solve all your problems abroad. Sandy, please. Alvin reached out to grab my sleeve, his hand trembling. I stepped back, letting his hand fall into the empty air. It's too late, Alvin, I said. The police are already on their way. I called them before I walked out of the office building. I'm pressing charges for defamation, public harassment, and extortion against both of you. What? Jimmy gasped, his face turning pale. You can't do that. We're family. You stopped being my family the moment you drove our mother to her death. I said, turning my back on him. And Alvin stopped being my brother the moment he stood in front of a mob and called me a monster. The arrival of 3 police cruisers quickly dispersed the remaining onlookers. Jimmy tried to slip away through the crowd, but several bystanders, eager to play the hero now that the truth was out, blocked his path until the officers detained him. I provided the officers with my phone, which contained the full unedited recording of the confrontation, along with a digital folder of the court-approved trust ledgers and the original, threatening text messages Jimmy and Alvin had sent me over the past week. She's lying. She assaulted me. Jimmy screamed as he was handcuffed. Look at my wrist. She twisted it. I want to press charges. The officer, a stern-faced woman who had already reviewed a portion of the livestream footage provided by a bystander, didn't even look at him. Sir, we have multiple video angles showing you lunging at her first. She acted in clear self-defense. Now get in the car. Alvin wasn't handcuffed, but he was escorted to a separate cruiser for questioning. He looked back at me, his eyes wide with terror and pleading. Sandy, please, don't do this. I'm your brother. I made a mistake. I'll apologize. I'll post a retraction. I didn't answer. I stood on the sidewalk, watching the flashing red and blue lights reflect off the glass facade of my office building. My supervisor, who had thrown the resignation letter at me earlier, was now standing near the entrance, looking incredibly nervous. Sandra, he said, jogging over to me with a strained, apologetic smile. Listen, I had no idea. The situation looked so bad online, and the company was worried about public relations. But now that we see the truth, of course, your job is completely safe. You can come back to work tomorrow. In fact, we can discuss a promotion. I resign, I said, interrupting him mid-sentence. He blinked, stunned. What? But Sandra, we're offering to make things right. You threw me to the wolves without even asking for my side of the story. I said, looking at him with utter disdain. You cared more about a temporary PR hiccup than the safety and dignity of an employee who has worked 60 hours a week for you for 3 years. I will have my lawyer contact HR to arrange my severance package. Do not contact me again. I turned and walked away, leaving him standing there, mouth agape. For the first time in 10 years, I felt a strange, light sensation in my chest. The weight of the world, which had rested on my shoulders since the day our mother died, was suddenly gone. I was unemployed, my brother hated me, and my personal life had been dragged through the mud. Yet, as I walked down the street, I felt incredibly free. The backlash against Jimmy and Alvin was swift and merciless. The internet, which had so eagerly condemned me based on Alvin's embellishments, turned its collective wrath upon them with double the intensity. Within 48 hours, the live-streamed video of the confrontation had gained millions of views. Sleuths on social media excavated Jimmy's entire history, his bankruptcies, his past extramarital affairs, and his fraudulent attempts to claim our mother's estate. Alvin's social media accounts were flooded with tens of thousands of comments, calling him an ungrateful parasite, a leech, and a traitor to his own blood. The boarding school he attended, highly sensitive to public scandal, issued a public statement condemning his actions and officially revoked his boarding privileges, forcing him to pack his bags and leave the dormitory immediately, because the college application deadlines had long passed and his reputation was completely shattered. No local community college or institution wanted anything to do with him. Jimmy was formally charged with extortion, incitement to public disturbance, and stalking. Because of his prior financial crimes and outstanding warrants for unpaid debts, his bail was set at an amount he couldn't possibly afford. He was remanded to county jail, pending trial. Alvin was left entirely alone. He had no money, no home, no school, and the father he had betrayed me for was behind bars. He tried to call me. He called me from payphones, from borrowed phones, and from burner accounts. He sent me endless emails, his tone shifting from desperate pleading to angry demands, and back to pathetic begging. Sandy, please answer me. I'm sleeping on a bench in the park. I haven't eaten in 2 days. Jimmy's wife kicked me out. She said it's my fault Jimmy's in jail. Sandy, I'm sick. My chest hurts. I think my heart is failing. You have to help me. You're my sister. You can't leave me to die. I'm sorry, Sandy. I'm so sorry. I'll do whatever you want. I'll work and pay you back the 580 grand. Just please don't abandon me. I read every single message. And then one by one, I deleted them. I knew his chest didn't hurt because of a heart failure. I had consulted with Dr. Vance myself after the confrontation. Alvin's heart was perfectly stable, and the valve replacements were fully functional. The pain he was feeling was nothing more than panic, hunger, and the cold, hard reality of the world he had chosen for himself. I didn't feel angry anymore. I didn't even feel sad. I felt only a profound, hollow indifference. 2 years passed. I sold the old family house I had fought so hard to buy back. It held too many ghosts, too much pain, and too many memories of a boy who no longer existed. With the proceeds from the sale, I moved to a quiet coastal city 300 miles away. I enrolled in a local university, majoring in business administration. It was the education I had sacrificed 10 years ago, finally reclaimed. I lived in a small, sunlit apartment overlooking the harbor, filled with green plants and books. I worked part-time as a consultant for a logistics firm, earning more than enough to live comfortably and pay my tuition. I had a new circle of friends, people who knew me simply as Sandra, a hardworking, quiet woman who loved coffee, running along the beach and reading by the window. They knew nothing of my past, and I liked it that way. One chilly autumn afternoon, as I was leaving the university library, I saw a familiar figure standing near the campus gates. Alvin. He was unrecognizable. The healthy, slightly chubby boy I had doted on was gone. In his place stood a thin, gaunt young man with hollow cheeks and dark circles under his eyes. He was wearing a faded, oversized jacket that looked like it had been salvaged from a donation bin, and his shoes were worn through at the soles. He had been waiting for me. He had somehow tracked me down. "Sandy," he whispered, stepping into my path. I stopped. I looked at him, my expression entirely neutral. "Sandy, please, just 5 minutes," he begged, his voice trembling. He looked like he was on the verge of tears, his hands shaking as he clutched a cheap plastic binder to his chest. I got a job. I'm working at a warehouse. I load boxes from 6 in the morning until 6 at night. It's hard, Sandy. My back hurts every day, and my hands, look at my hands." He held out his hands. They were covered in blisters, calluses, and dirt. They looked exactly like my hands had looked 2 years ago. "I'm saving money," he continued, his words spilling out in a desperate rush. "I've saved $3,000. I have it right here in this account. I want to give it to you. It's the first installment. I want to pay back the 580 grand I owe you. Even if it takes me my entire life, I'll pay it back. Just, please don't look at me like I'm a stranger." I looked at the plastic binder he was holding. I looked at his blistered hands. And then, I looked into his eyes. I didn't see the little boy who used to hold my hand when he was scared of the hospital needles. I didn't see the brother who used to share his candy with me. I saw only a young man who had learned the hard way that actions have consequences and that some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. "Keep the money, Alvin," I said, my voice gentle but completely detached. "Sandy." A spark of hope lit up in his eyes. Does that mean you forgive me?" "No," I replied softly. "It means I don't care anymore. The 580 grand was the price I paid to buy my own freedom from a family that would have drained me dry. I consider the debt settled." "But I want to be your brother again," he sobbed, the tears finally spilling over. "I have no one, Sandy. Dad is in prison, and his family won't even speak to me. I'm all alone." "You chose to walk away, Alvin," I said. "You chose to believe the lies in you. Chose to destroy the only person who actually cared about you. You have to live with that choice now. Please, Sandy, just let me have dinner with you. Just once a month. I'll do anything." He reached out to grab my hand, but I stepped aside, maintaining a polite, distant boundary. "Goodbye, Alvin," I said. I walked past him. I didn't look back. Behind me, I could hear him weeping, his desperate cries fading into the ambient noise of the campus and the gentle rustle of the autumn leaves. But my feet didn't hesitate. I walked toward my apartment, toward the quiet life I had built with my own hands, and toward a future that belonged entirely to me.